She ran because she refused to be handed over to a cruel man, far too old to be her husband. That night, believing she was running into the arms of the great love of her life, she discovered something worse than rejection. She overheard the cruel plans, the lies, and everything he truly thought of her. Betrayed, humiliated, and with no way out, she believed she had lost everything. Until she stumbled into a stranger in the darkness. In an act of desperation, she did the unthinkable. She asked that man to marry her, without imagining that she was offering her life to the alpha king of another realm, the most powerful, the most coveted, the most dangerous of them all. The decision to run had not been born of courage. It had been born of desperation. Ariel watched herself in the mirror of her chambers, her fingers trembling as she fastened the last jewel into her chestnut hair, which fell in waves over her shoulders. The reflection staring back at her did not seem like her own. That woman with red, swollen eyes, skin too pale, lips pressed into a thin line of determination. That was not Lady Ariel of Valamore, the obedient daughter of Lord Cedric of Valamore. She was a desperate stranger. In 3 days, I will belong to Lord Bartholomew. The thought struck as it always did now. A brutal blow that stole the air from her lungs. 3 days. 72 hours until her father would hand her over like prized cattle to a man old enough to be her grandfather, whose filthy, sweaty hands had touched her face during the betrothal dinner, as if he already had the right to touch whatever he pleased. The way his gaze had traveled over her body with calculated possession had made her stomach churn. You will survive this, she had thought that night, locked inside her chambers. Many women survive, but surviving was not living. And Ariel had tasted what it meant to live during those secret months with Thomas. The memories came without permission, as they always did. Thomas smiling at her in the moonlit gardens, their fingers intertwined as they walked between the rose bushes. Thomas whispering promises against her lips during stolen kisses behind the stables. Thomas writing letters that she hid between the pages of books. Words of love that made her heart race every time she reread them. "Let's run away," he had written in his last letter, 3 weeks before the engagement was announced. "I will find a way. Trust me." And she had trusted him. Heavens, how she had trusted him. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her straighten her shoulders. The youngest maid, Eliza, the one who had agreed to help her out of pure compassion and the promise of a small fortune when everything was over, entered the chambers carrying a tray of tea that neither of them would touch. "The guards at the East Tower will be changing shifts in 1 hour," Eliza whispered, her nervous eyes darting toward the closed door. "You will have 15 minutes, maybe less, to cross the servants' corridor and descend into the tunnels." Ariel nodded, her throat too tight to speak. 15 minutes between imprisonment and freedom, between a life that suffocated her and the chance to breathe again. "And Thomas?" Her voice came out weaker than she intended. "Did you deliver my message?" "I did. I gave it to him personally this morning. He said he will be waiting at the tavern on the edge of the village, just as you asked." Relief and anxiety mixed in Ariel's chest in warm waves. "He will be there. He loves me. This will work." But a small voice, the one she had been silencing for weeks, whispered treacherously, "What if it doesn't?" Ariel shoved the thought away with force. She could not allow herself to doubt now. Not after weeks of planning every detail, memorizing every guard patrol pattern, gathering every gold coin and every jewel she had managed to hide. The velvet pouch resting heavy against her waist beneath the dark cloak was proof of her determination. It was everything she owned in the world, all her wealth accumulated since childhood. And I will give it all to him. Every coin, every jewel. Because without Thomas, this gold is worth nothing. "My lady," Eliza touched her arm gently, "there is still time to change your mind. If your father finds out, if the guards catch you, then they will catch me." The words came out firm, firmer than Ariel felt. But I have to try, Eliza. I have to at least try to choose my own fate, even if only for one night." The maid nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "And may the love you seek be true. May it be true." The words echoed in Ariel's mind as she waited, every minute dragging like hours. She mentally reviewed the path through the servants' tunnels, those narrow, dusty passages she had discovered as a child during explorations her governess would have considered improper for a young lady. How many times had she hidden there, pretending to be an adventurer escaping imaginary dragons? She had never thought she would one day use those tunnels to escape a real dragon, one wearing the face of her own father. Lord Cedric of Valamore was not a cruel man by nature. He did not beat his servants, did not rule with obvious tyranny, but his ambition was cold and calculated, and his only daughter had always been, in his eyes, a political tool to be used at the right moment. Marriage to Lord Bartholomew would bring land, influence, an alliance that would strengthen Valamore's position among the northern realms. Anger burned hot in Ariel's chest, temporarily pushing the fear aside. She had spent 20 years being shaped, prepared, polished for this exact purpose. Etiquette lessons, dancing instruction, training in household management, all so she could be the perfect wife for whatever nobleman her father chose. But no one had ever asked what she wanted. No one had cared that her heart belonged to someone else. A soft knock at the door made her jump. Eliza entered again, her face pale. "It is time, my lady. The guards have just left for the East Tower. Time to choose." Ariel stood, her legs unsteady but functional. She took the dark cloak and pulled the hood over her head until only her face was visible. The velvet pouch bumped against her thigh with every movement, reminding her of the weight of her decision. "Eliza." She clasped the maid's hands tightly. "Thank you. For everything. When Thomas and I are safe, I will send the payment I promised. Just stay safe, my lady. Just be happy." There were no more words. Ariel followed Eliza through the silent corridors of the castle, every step measured and careful. The familiar sounds of the night surrounded her, the distant crackle of fireplaces, the low murmur of voices from the servants' quarters, the lonely howl of the wind against the stone windows. "I will miss this," she thought with surprise. "This place, this life, despite everything." But the sense of loss was already mixed with relief when they finally reached the entrance to the servants' tunnels, hidden behind a faded tapestry in a rarely used corridor. Eliza pulled the heavy fabric aside, revealing the old wooden door that creaked as it opened. 15 minutes, the maid whispered urgently. "No more. After that, the guards will be back." Ariel nodded and stepped into the darkness of the tunnels. The tunnel was narrow and stifling. Ancient dust clung to her skin. Cold stones scraped her fingers as she hurried forward. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed to betray her escape. She did not stop. She did not think. She simply moved. The tunnels finally opened into a hidden exit near the outer stables, far from the eyes of the main guards. Ariel pushed the door open, and the cool night air struck her like a slap, carrying with it the scent of hay and horses. Freedom. The stone streets of the village were deserted at this hour, most families already gathered inside their homes. Ariel kept her hood low over her face, her steps quick even in delicate shoes that had never been meant for running. The tavern stood at the edge of the village, where travelers stopped before continuing north. A perfect place for two people to disappear without many questions. Thomas will be there. He promised. The warm lights of the tavern appeared ahead, voices and laughter spilling through the windows. Ariel slowed her pace, forcing herself to breathe more steadily. She could not enter looking like a desperate madwoman, even if that was exactly how she felt. Her hand touched the velvet pouch once more, feeling its comforting weight. "This will work. I will give him the money. We will run away before dawn. And tomorrow we will be far enough that my father will never find us." She pushed open the tavern door. Heat hit her first, the smell of beer and smoke and sweaty bodies. The tavern was busy for a weekday night. Tables filled with men playing dice and sharing tankards, a few women serving drinks with tired smiles. No one looked twice at the hooded figure who entered. Ariel's eyes scanned the room, searching. Where is he? Where? And then she saw him. Thomas was sitting in a dark corner, his familiar figure leaning over a table with two other men. The smile on his face was wide, animated in a way Ariel rarely saw. He came. He really came. But relief was quickly replaced by confusion. He brought other people? Why? Unease grew in her chest. They were supposed to flee immediately. There was no time for social conversation. Every minute spent there was another minute for the guards to discover her absence. Maybe they are people who will help us, she tried to convince herself. Maybe he arranged transportation or... But something about his body language was wrong. Too relaxed, too confident, like someone in no hurry at all. Ariel began to move toward him, but her instincts made her hesitate. Instead, she slipped between the tables, keeping to the shadows, approaching from a different angle where she could hear them without being seen. Just to be sure, just to understand what was happening. It had to be her imagination. It had to be her nerves making her see problems where there were none. The voices reached her in fragments at first, lost amid the general noise of the tavern. Then she moved closer, hiding behind a thick wooden pillar, and Thomas's words struck her like physical blows. She should be on her way now, he was saying, checking the moon's position through the window. Probably crawling through the castle tunnels at this very moment, thinking she's being so clever. One of the men laughed, a harsh sound that made Ariel's stomach twist. And she really believes you're going to run away with her? A common-blood werewolf with Lord Cedric's daughter? Believes? Thomas leaned back in his chair, his grin wide and cruel. She is completely convinced. You should have seen the way she looked at me during our secret meetings, like I was some kind of romantic hero from her stupid books. Thomas, save me. Thomas, take me away. Thomas, I love you. He mimicked her voice, high and whiny, and the men burst into laughter that seemed to echo straight through Ariel's bones. No, this cannot be happening. The older man wiped tears of laughter from his eyes. So the plan stays the same? We help you escape with her. Take you out of the village, as agreed. Exactly. Thomas took a satisfied swig of beer. You'll escort us along the northern roads, like hired guards protecting us. It will look legitimate. The fool will feel safe, even protected. And when we reach Thornwood Forest? The younger man asked, leaning forward with morbid interest. Thomas's smile widened, predatory and cruel. Then we do exactly what we planned. I take all her gold, all the jewels that spoiled noble brat has been hoarding for years, and the three of us split the fortune. Then we leave her there, alone and with nothing, far enough from home that she can't easily return. A fortune split 3 ways, the older man murmured, his eyes gleaming with greed. Enough for each of us to live comfortably for years. Far more than that, my friend. Thomas raised his tankard in a mocking toast. Jewels from a noble house, gold collected since childhood. We're talking about enough wealth to buy land, start businesses, live like lords in any village we choose. And all we have to do is pretend to help a lovesick fool for a few hours. And if she causes trouble afterward? If she tells someone? Thomas shrugged with cruel indifference. Who will believe her? A desperate noblewoman who ran away from home to meet a lover and was abandoned in the forest. They'll think she lost her mind from shame. And even if someone does believe her, the 3 of us will be far too gone to be found, with enough money to disappear into different realms if necessary. He checked the moon's position again, gauging the time. She should arrive any moment now. I can't wait to see that lovesick look in those foolish eyes when I appear all concerned about our great romantic escape. It will be almost too entertaining. The 3 men laughed, a low conspiratorial sound that blended with the tavern's noise. Ariel's legs nearly gave out. She had to brace herself against the pillar to keep from falling, her hand pressed over her mouth to stifle any sound that might escape. Months. Wasted. Her mind struggled to process, to understand. The kisses, the promises, the letters she had kept against her heart, all lies, all just a careful plan to steal her fortune. And worse, he had not been alone in it. There were accomplices. An elaborate scheme. The pain was physical, a crushing weight in her chest that made breathing impossible. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Not here. Not in front of them. She had to leave. She had to escape before she completely lost control, before Thomas saw her and put that cruel performance into motion. But when she took a step back, the world spun dangerously. The betrayal, the humiliation, the renewed despair of realizing she was back at the beginning, without a plan, without help, without jewels. Ariel looked down at the velvet pouch still tied at her waist. Everything she owned in the world. The fortune Thomas and his accomplices planned to steal from her with false smiles and an elaborate act of romantic escape. No, the pain began to turn into something else, something colder, sharper, anger, pure burning anger that dried her tears and hardened something inside her. They will not have me. Not my money. Not my continued humiliation. Not the satisfaction of leaving me broken in a forest. But what would she do now? Return to the castle? Face marriage to Bartholomew with no way out? The thought made bile rise in her throat. There has to be another way. She turned, walking blindly toward the tavern door. She needed to think, to breathe, to find a solution before it was too late. The jewels were still with her. That meant she still had options, still had some way to buy her freedom. But how? How, when the only plan I had has just been revealed not only as a lie, but as a cruel trap? The tears returned, silent and hot, streaming down her face as she pushed the door open and stepped into the cold night air. The outside world felt too bright, too real. The moon too luminous for the darkness consuming her chest. Ariel began to walk without direction, simply needing to move, needing to put distance between herself and those voices laughing at her naivete, plotting her ruin. But her feet stumbled on the uneven stones of the street, her vision blurred by tears, making it impossible to see clearly. That was when she collided with someone. The impact was solid, strong enough to make her lose her balance. She was going to fall, going to finally collapse completely, but a hand closed firmly around her arm, stopping her fall. Wait. The voice was deep, commanding, carrying a weight of authority that made Ariel freeze instinctively. But there was something else in it too, an unexpected softness that contrasted with the firmness of the grip. Please. Her own voice came out broken, desperate. Please let me go. I need to leave. She tried to pull her arm free, but the hand did not loosen. It did not hurt, was not violent, but it was firm, unmovable. You are crying. It was not a question. It was an observation, stated with absolute certainty. Ariel kept her eyes tightly shut, refusing to look at whoever was holding her. That is none of your concern. Please, look at me. There was command in those words, but also something that sounded genuinely concerned. Fingers touched gently beneath her chin, applying the slightest pressure to lift her face. For a long moment, Ariel resisted. She kept her eyes closed, turned her face as much as she could away from that gentle but insistent touch. But finally, too exhausted to keep fighting, she yielded. She opened her eyes. The man before her stole her breath. He was tall, easily a head and a half above her, with broad shoulders that filled the fine coat he wore. But it was his eyes that held her. Pure amber, glowing in the torchlight of the street like molten gold, studying her face with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. Blonde hair fell to his shoulders, and there was something in the way he held her, in the way he stood with absolute confidence in his own strength, that spoke of nobility. "Who is this man?" "What happened?" he asked again, his voice lower now, almost gentle. And perhaps it was the shock of Thomas's betrayal still burning. Perhaps it was the desperation of having nowhere to go, nothing left to do. Perhaps it was simply that this stranger was looking at her as if he truly cared about the answer, when her own father had never cared enough to ask whether she wanted the arranged marriage. The words came before she could stop them. "It happened," she whispered, her voice breaking into uneven pieces. "Something terrible happened." He did not respond immediately, only waited. Patient. As if he had all the time in the world to listen to the troubles of a stranger crying in the street. And she simply fell apart. "I thought he loved me." The words poured out in a desperate rush, tears now falling freely. "I risked everything. Everything. I planned my escape for weeks, gathered every coin I owned, every jewel. And I came here to meet him. To run away with him because I would rather die free than live as the property of a man I despise." She sobbed, wiping her tears furiously. But they kept coming. And he was in there, with 2 other men, planning it all. They were going to pretend to help me escape, make me feel safe, and then rob me. Take all my money and leave me abandoned in some distant forest. Laughing at me, calling me foolish, saying I was naive and spoiled. It was all a lie. Every promise, every kiss, every letter, all just an elaborate trap to steal from me. Mine. The thought hit Archer like lightning the moment he caught her, stopping her from falling. Instant, primitive, absolute. He should not have been in that village that night. He should have been at the encampment with his retinue, preparing for the formal negotiations set to begin at dawn, but the idea of one more night suffocating beneath the weight of the crown, the expectations, the constant performance that being king demanded, had been too much. So he had slipped out. Dressed in simple clothes, though unmistakably fine to any attentive eye, wanting only to walk, to breathe, to be a man for a few hours before the role of King Archer of Thornhaven swallowed him again. And then she collided with him. The beast inside him recognized something in her before his conscious mind could catch up, and when she finally opened her eyes, those deep brown eyes, bruised and full of pain so raw, something in him simply knew. She is my mate. "What happened?" he heard himself ask, his voice lower, gentler than he meant it to be. And she broke. The words spilled out in a desperate rush. The betrayal, the man who had pretended to love her only to steal her fortune, the accomplices planning to abandon her in some distant forest, the forced marriage waiting for her in 3 days. With every word, Archer's anger swelled, hot, dangerous. The growl he swallowed at the back of his throat would have sent men running. His fingers tightened slightly around her arm, not enough to hurt, but enough for the beast inside him to feel that he was holding what was his. Who dared lay hands on her? Who dared plan to harm her? But he held himself in check, forced every muscle to loosen, forced his voice to stay calm while he let her pour it all out. Because she was shattered, vulnerable, and pushing anything now, even protection, would be just another way of taking her choices away. She's brave, he thought, admiration mixing with fury. Desperate, but unbelievably brave. When she finally stopped, wiping at her tears with angry, frantic strokes, he simply kept holding her. Let his presence be an anchor. Waited. And it was she who broke the silence in a way he never could have expected. "You can't help me." The words came out like a plea dressed up as resignation. "I have nowhere to go. Nothing except..." She touched the pouch at her waist. "Except this." Archer watched in silence, trying to understand where she was going with this. "It's gold, Jewels, everything I own in this world. Fresh tears slid down her cheeks. I was going to give it all to him, that liar, and now I don't know what to do. My father will find me when the sun comes up, and in 3 days I'll be chained to Lord Bartholomew. She looked up, and Archer saw the exact moment desperation turned into reckless determination. But you, she whispered, studying him. You're a nobleman. The way you carry yourself, the clothes, you have standing, influence. Her hands went to the pouch, and Archer watched, stunned, disbelieving as she untied it. Torchlight flashed on gold as she opened it, offering it to him with shaking hands. What is she? I have this, a fortune. Her voice strengthened through the tears. And I'll give it all to you. She drew a deep breath, lifting her chin. If you marry me. The shock was total. She is asking me to marry her. This woman is trying to buy me. Archer looked at the pouch, then back into her eyes, bright with tears, and yet lit by a desperate courage that was both broken and unbreakable. My mate is offering gold to buy me as her husband. The irony was so perfect he had to fight not to laugh. Please, she went on, taking his silence for refusal. I know it sounds insane, a stranger offering money to marry her, but I don't have a choice. If I'm already married, if I already have a husband, my father can't force me. The contract with Bartholomew will be void. The tears kept falling, but her resolve was absolute. She had been betrayed, but she was not giving up. She was fighting. And then Archer started to laugh, not loudly, not cruelly, just a low sound of genuine amusement. Why are you laughing? Offense edged her confusion. I'm not laughing at you. It's just the irony. He took the pouch, and the casual way he held it, as if the weight meant nothing, should have been a clue. What if I told you there's something more permanent than marriage? Something that guarantees no one, neither your father, nor this Lord Bartholomew, nor any other man, can ever claim you? She blinked. More permanent than marriage? Among our people there is the claiming bond. His voice dropped, heavy with meaning. A connection that goes beyond papers and vows, recognized above any noble law. Once it's established, no one can undo it. Her eyes widened. Recognition. The claiming bond, she repeated, her voice small. My grandmother told stories about the old bonds, about how in the past werewolves claimed each other through moon and blood. She said it was law above any marriage, that it transcended noble agreements. Ariel paused. But I thought it was a legend. It isn't a legend. It's just become rare. She studied him. And you know how to create it? Yes, he said. My grandmother said only pure-blood alphas still held that knowledge. Awe rose in her voice. You're an alpha. It wasn't a question. Yes. Ariel looked at the pouch, then at him. Then she asked the questions that proved her mind was still working. Does this bond really nullify the marriage to Bartholomew? My father wouldn't have the power to take me from you? The bond overrides any human agreement. The moment it's completed, you will be under my protection. Your father will have no legal power to force you. The contract with Bartholomew will be void. She processed it, weighing it. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a conscious choice. And the bond is permanent, she said slowly. My grandmother said once it was made, it couldn't be broken, that it tied two people together forever. Yes. He would not lie to her. Ariel stared at him for a long moment. And Archer watched the battle inside her, fear warring with necessity, doubt with courage. She was afraid of trading one prison for another, afraid that this powerful alpha would become a different kind of chain. But she looked into his eyes and saw something Thomas's betrayal had nearly destroyed. Honesty. Certainty without deception. And still, she chose. I accept, she said, firm. It has to be my choice. I can't be forced into anything else. I need to offer something so it's a transaction where I have power. So determined to keep her dignity. Then I accept what you're offering. Not because I need it, but because offering it matters to you. Hope flickered. So you'll create the bond? Yes, but only if you say it again when you're calmer. Archer cupped her face gently. I won't trap you in another kind of cage. I need you to be sure, not just desperate. She held his gaze, breathed, and when she spoke, there was absolute strength in it. I'm sure. I want this. Mine. Then come. Archer guided her down the street. When they passed an alley, he stopped, eyes catching on the shadows. Marcus. A figure stepped out, power and loyalty radiating from him. Gather 2 guards. The clearing to the north. We need witnesses. Marcus looked from Archer to Ariel, eyes widening. Your Majesty, you... Go. Absolute command. Marcus vanished. Ariel looked at Archer, almost choking on the word. Your Majesty? Why did he... The look Archer gave her was pure control. Dominant, but not threatening. Marcus has formal habits. Ignore it. But she didn't ignore it. Your Majesty. The word planted seeds of questions. The clearing opened beneath the full moon, washed in silver. Marcus waited with 2 guards. Archer turned his attention back to Ariel. The bond will be created through a bite. It will be here. He touched lightly where her neck met her shoulder. The place our people recognize. My grandmother described it, Ariel murmured. She said it was intimate. You will feel my instincts, my emotions, and I'll feel yours. Deep and permanent. She took a steadying breath. And you truly want to do this? Yes. Through the touch, she felt absolute certainty. Then do it. I choose this. Archer stepped closer. His hand settled on her shoulders. Last chance. I'm not changing my mind. Keep your end. He smiled, then swept her hair aside. Moonlight bathed her skin, turning it into living silver. The air thickened, charged with something ancient and powerful. Under the moon, I claim you. And he bit. The world exploded. Ariel gasped, not from pain, but from sensation. Heat surged from where he bit her, spreading like molten fire through her veins. Her entire body came alive in ways she didn't understand. Sounds sharpened. She could hear the wind whispering secrets through the leaves, his breath against her skin, the beat of 2 hearts. 2. Pounding closer and closer, sinking until she couldn't tell which was hers. And then came the wave of emotions that weren't hers. Fierce satisfaction, absolute protectiveness. A primitive possessiveness that should have frightened her, but somehow made her feel safe. As if, at last, someone saw her as something precious. When Archer pulled back, licking the wound, Ariel was breathing hard. The world had changed, colors brighter, sounds clearer, and him, his presence a steady pulse inside her like a second heart. What? Her voice failed. Her hand flew to her neck. Is that you? The bond, my emotions, and I feel yours. It was true. Through the connection, she felt his certainty, his strength, and something possessive that should have scared her, yet made her feel safe in ways she had never felt before. She closed her eyes, sorting through the chaos. The pain of Thomas's betrayal was still there, raw. But there was relief too. The crushing weight lifted. And hope. Intense, she whispered. You'll get used to it. She opened her eyes, meeting his. Through the bond she felt something in him settle, like her gaze brought him a deep peace. It worked. My father can't force me anymore. No, no one can. You're free. Free. Tears burned, not from pain but from relief so intense it hurt in a different way. I chose this, and it worked. Archer drew her closer. You were brave, and you'll never be alone again. What do we do now? Archer studied her face. There was so much she would learn tomorrow. Marcus and the guards will escort you back, but we'll see each other very soon, sooner than you think. And when that happens... He paused, a mysterious smile curving his mouth. A lot is going to change. He took her hands, squeezing firmly. You made the right choice. Trust that. And trust that, no matter what you learn tomorrow, I'm on your side. Always. The intensity in his words made her shiver. Through the bond, she felt layers of meaning she couldn't decipher. I trust you. Her words cut through Archer like a blessed blade. Trust. After being betrayed so brutally. She looked at him with clean eyes, unaware that what bound them went far beyond the claiming bond they had just formed. She didn't recognize it. Not yet. Her heart had been so fixed on that wretch, Thomas, so shattered by betrayal, that when his primal instincts screamed mate the moment they touched, she was too blinded by pain to hear it. To feel the call that rang through every fiber of his being. She is my Luna, and she has no idea. The irony was almost poetic. She had offered gold to buy a husband of convenience, never realizing she was offering treasures to a man who already considered every one of her breaths more valuable than all the kingdoms in the world. But he would wait. He would let her discover it in her own time. Tomorrow would bring enough revelations. His identity, his kingdom, the weight of the crown he carried. She didn't need the added burden of knowing fate had tied her to him before she could even choose. First, she needed to heal. Then she would see what he had seen from the start. Marcus stepped closer. My lady, we need to go. She hesitated. I don't even know your name. Archer smiled, promising surprises. You'll learn tomorrow. For now, rest. The journey back felt surreal. Marcus and the guards treated Ariel with a reverence that left her confused. Why are they looking at me like that? Through the bond, she felt Archer at a distance. Satisfaction, certainty, fierce protection, and peace. Back at the castle, Ariel lay down, her hand touching the mark. Through the bond, she could feel Archer, solid as rock. Who are you? Why does everyone treat you like that? Why does Marcus call you your majesty? But the questions could wait. The mark pulsed beneath her fingers, and for the first time in weeks, Ariel slept, without fear. The dawn came far too soon. Ariel woke to Eliza's gentle touch shaking her shoulder, the maid's voice edged with urgency. My lady, you need to wake up. Your father is demanding your presence in the Great Hall immediately. Ariel's heart lurched. But then through the bond, she felt something, a calm, solid presence, pulsing with absolute certainty. Archer. Even at a distance, the connection between them was an anchor. Why? Ariel asked, sitting up. What happened? Eliza looked nervous, wringing her apron in her hands. There's an important visitor. All the nobles in the castle have been summoned. Your father said it's a matter of utmost diplomatic importance. How much time do I have? Half an hour, at most. Your father is extremely agitated, my lady. I've never seen him like this. Ariel nodded, already rising. Her hand went instinctively to her neck, touching the mark that still pulsed with warmth. Through the contact, she felt another wave from the bond, something that felt almost like amusement. What are you plotting? Eliza, I need a high-collared dress. The most formal one we have. The maid went to the wardrobe and returned with a dark green velvet gown with an ornate collar. As she helped Ariel dress, her eyes studied her mistress with curiosity. My lady, Eliza said hesitantly. Thank goodness you gave up on running. If your father had found out... Ariel touched the mark hidden beneath the collar, feeling the heat beating there. I didn't give up, Eliza. I just found a different way out. The maid frowned, confused, but didn't question her. The great hall was packed when Ariel arrived. Nobles from all over Valamore had been summoned, dressed in their finest, all whispering with curiosity. The air was thick with tension and expectation. Lord Bartholomew was there, his bulky body draped in expensive silks. When his eyes found Ariel, he smiled, a possessive smile that made her stomach turn. In 3 days, I was supposed to be his, but not anymore. Thomas was there too, dressed as a servant, positioned among the other castle workers. When their eyes met, he winked, a conspiratorial gesture that made it clear he still thought she was the lovesick fool. Ariel's anger burned cold in her chest. He will face judgment. Lord Cedric, her father, stood at the center of the hall, visibly unsettled. He adjusted his clothes, checked positions, barked orders at servants. Sweat shone on his forehead despite the morning chill. Who could make him this nervous? Ariel, her father called, waving her closer. You look presentable. Good. King Archer of Thornhaven honors us with his presence for crucial territorial negotiations. You will conduct yourself with the utmost dignity. Understood? Ariel nodded. Her father was Lord Cedric of Valamore, a powerful ruler, but not a king. And he was about to negotiate with one of the most powerful kings in the werewolf lands. No wonder he was nervous. Yes, father. Stand there. He pointed to a space among the other nobles. And do not speak unless you are directly addressed. Ariel obeyed, taking her place where indicated. Through the bond, she felt a presence drawing nearer. Archer. He was close now. Very close. Her heart sped up. Is he among the entourage? Hidden. Watching. The minutes dragged. The hall held a tense silence, everyone waiting. And then it happened. Ariel shifted slightly, adjusting her stance, and the collar of her dress slipped. An older maid standing nearby saw it first. Her eyes widened. My lady, she whispered urgently, reaching for Ariel's collar. Your collar is... It's fine. Ariel tried to step back, but the maid was already straightening the fabric, and she saw it. The mark. Unmistakable. Deep. Fresh. The maid gasped, the sound far too loud in the silent hall. Lord Cedric stopped mid-conversation with a nobleman and turned sharply. What is it? The maid had gone pale, her mouth opening and closing. Then, finally, my lord, your daughter. She bears a mark. Ice flooded Ariel's veins. The entire hall seemed to freeze, conversations dying as everyone turned to stare. Lord Cedric crossed the distance in furious strides, seized Ariel by the shoulder and yanked her collar down without ceremony. The mark was exposed for all to see. Perfect. Fresh. Unmistakable. A claiming bite placed exactly where werewolf tradition demanded. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Lord Cedric erupted. What is this? His voice thundered, furious and disbelieving. Ariel, what have you done? She lifted her chin, refusing to shrink even as every eye turned on her. I took control of my own fate. Control? His face went red. You're marked. Marked by a claiming bond. Who? Who dared touch you without my permission? No one touched me without my permission, Ariel replied, steel in her voice. I consented, fully and knowingly. I chose this. Lord Bartholomew had stepped forward, his face twisted. She's ruined. Our contract is void. That was the point, Ariel said, looking straight at him. I'd take anything over belonging to you. The slap came fast. Her father's hand struck her cheek hard enough to snap her head to the side. Pain flared sharp and hot, blooming across her skin, leaving an immediate red mark. You've ruined everything, her father was shouting now. Years of negotiations, of planning, and you destroy it all for some ridiculous fantasy. Who was it? Tell me who it was so I can kill him and end this farce." Ariel turned her head back, touching her burning cheek. Through the bond, she felt something shift violently, like a wave of absolute fury detonating somewhere in the distance. Archer felt it. He felt my pain. "You will not lay a hand on him," she said, her voice low but loaded with certainty. "And he is not just any werewolf." "Then who?" Lord Bartholomew demanded. "Which bold servant had the audacity to—" The great hall doors slammed open, and Ariel's world changed completely. Archer stepped in, and there was nothing simple about him now. He wore royal attire, black and gold fabrics that screamed power and bloodline, a cloak flowing behind him like wings. Blonde hair was partly pulled back, revealing a face that was both devastatingly handsome and utterly unforgiving. And his eyes, those amber eyes that had looked at her with gentleness, now burned with golden fire, barely contained fury rolling off him in waves that made every werewolf in the hall instinctively recoil. No, it can't be. But it was. Marcus entered at his side, wearing Thornhaven's colors, and behind them came a retinue of royal guards, each bearing weapons and crests. The entire hall dropped into deep reverence. Nobles bowed, servants knelt, and the earlier chaos collapsed into absolute silence. Lord Cedric went deathly pale, dropping to his knees so quickly he nearly stumbled. "Your Majesty, I had no idea Your Majesty had... We were expecting you, but Archer didn't look at him. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes went straight to Ariel, and the intensity of that gaze hit her like a bolt of lightning. He crossed the hall in measured steps, every movement heavy with authority and barely restrained fury. Nobles moved out of his way without thinking, self-preservation taking over. Ariel stood frozen, unable to move as the truth crashed over her like a tidal wave. The man I offered gold to. The man I proposed marriage to as if he needed my fortune. The stranger in the street who accepted my desperate offer. He was King Archer of Thornhaven. Humiliation burned through her, tangled with shock. He knew. All along, he knew exactly who he was. But through the bond, that connection that now made such terrible sense, she felt his answer. Not mockery, fury at her pain, satisfaction at finally revealing himself, and something deeper. Mine. Someone touched what is mine. Archer stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the heat of his body, the power radiating from him. And then, with a gentleness that clashed violently with the fury pulsing through the bond, he lifted his hand and touched her cheek, where the red imprint of the slap was still visible. His fingers were soft, but she felt the tremor of contained rage in them. "Who?" His voice came out low and dangerous, echoing through the silent hall. "Dared to hurt you?" Lord Cedric, still on his knees, went even paler. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. No one answered. Fear was thick in the air. Archer didn't take his eyes off Ariel, but his next question was aimed at the room. I asked, who dared to lay hands on her? The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, a voice shook from the floor. Lord Cedric. "Your Majesty, I didn't know that Your Majesty had..." Archer turned slowly, his eyes locking onto Lord Cedric on his knees. "You." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "You struck her." "I didn't know," Lord Cedric stammered. "My daughter, she marked herself without permission, ruined years of planning. I didn't know it was Your Majesty who..." "Ah." The word was ice cold. "So, you would have had permission to strike her if she weren't my mate. Is that what you're telling me?" Lord Cedric opened his mouth, then shut it again, unable to answer. Archer turned back to Ariel, and with a deliberate motion, pulled her collar fully aside, exposing the mark for everyone to see clearly. "She bears my mark," Archer said, his voice carrying through the hall with absolute authority. "She is my mate, my queen, and you," he looked back at Lord Cedric, "have just made the mistake of hurting her." The hall erupted in shocked gasps. Queen. He called her queen. Through the chaos, Ariel heard whispers. "The king's mate. She'll be Thornhaven's queen." King Archer has never chosen before. Lord Cedric was visibly trembling. "Your Majesty, I beg forgiveness." "I didn't know she was your daughter," Archer cut him off, his voice like steel, "is no longer yours to command or punish. She is under my protection. And whether in my presence or not, anyone who touches her without her consent will answer to me personally." The threat hung in the air, clear and lethal. Archer looked at Lord Bartholomew, who stood trembling near the dais. "As for you and your ridiculous contract, it is void. The claiming bond overrides any human agreement. I suggest you forget any claim you thought you had over her." Bartholomew shook his head frantically. "No, Your Majesty. I have no claim. I beg forgiveness." "Out! Get out of my sight!" Bartholomew practically fled the hall, his dignity in tatters. Archer turned back to Ariel, and when he spoke, his voice softened, only for her. "Are you all right?" It was the same question as last night, the same impossible gentleness beneath all that fury. Ariel paused, searching for words through the storm of emotion. "All this time, you're the king. You were always the king." "Yes," he admitted simply. "I always was." "I offered you gold," she whispered, shame scorching her. "I proposed marriage to the richest king in the lands as if you needed it, as if a handful of coins meant anything to you. And I accepted," Archer replied, his voice low but steady, "because you chose me without knowing what came with that title. You were brave enough to take control of your fate, to make a desperate proposal, but an honest one, and that matters more than any crown." Through the bond, she felt his absolute sincerity. There was no mockery, only deep respect, and something else, something fierce and possessive that made her feel safe in ways she never had before. "Come," Archer said, holding out his hand. "You need to leave this hall, and I need to step away from your father before my patience runs out completely." The veiled threat was unmistakable. Ariel looked at the offered hand, looked at the hall full of stunned eyes, looked at her father still on his knees, visibly terrified, and she placed her hand in his. Archer laced their fingers together, firm and warm, then turned to the hall. "The territorial negotiations will be postponed," he declared with authority that allowed no argument. "My mate and I have matters to settle. Marcus will remain for preliminary discussions with Lord Cedric. I will return when I am ready." Marcus bowed his head, though his eyes still held surprise at everything he had witnessed. "As you command, Your Majesty." Archer guided Ariel out of the hall, fingers interlocked with hers, his presence steady and protective through the bond. And as the doors closed behind them, Ariel heard the hall erupt into frantic conversation, shocked voices trying to process the impossible thing they had just witnessed. But it didn't matter anymore, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. The most powerful king in the lands, the man she had offered gold to without knowing, the alpha she had proposed marriage to in desperation, had chosen to defend her in front of everyone. He had chosen her. Ariel stopped in the corridor, pulling her hand free from his. She led him through the halls, servants passing by stopping to bow deeply when they saw them, but none dared interrupt. At last, they reached the most luxurious guest chambers, those reserved for visitors of the highest importance. Ariel opened the door and stepped inside first, and Archer followed. The silence that fell when the door closed was dense, heavy. For long seconds, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, the weight of everything that had happened pressing into the air between them. Then Ariel turned and said exactly what she was thinking. "You were laughing at me." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Archer met her gaze, but he didn't deny it right away. "No." "No?" She took a step toward him. "You knew who you were. You knew I was offering gold to the richest man in the lands. And you smiled. I saw that smile. It wasn't mockery. Then what was it?" Her voice rose slightly. Amusement? Pity for the desperate noblewoman who didn't know who she was talking to? "It was relief," Archer said, and there was something in his voice that made her stop. She blinked. "What?" He drew a slow breath, then stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could see every detail of his expression. "And then a woman runs into me on a dark street. She's crying, shattered, and she makes me a proposal." He smiled, but there was something deep in his eyes. A terrible proposal, I should say. Completely improper, desperate, without formalities or political games. He paused, something sacred weighing his voice. "And that woman? She was my mate. My companion chosen by the moon goddess. Something so rare I never thought I would be blessed with it. And she was offering me gold, proposing marriage, with no idea that fate had already bound us." Ariel couldn't breathe. The irony was almost perfect. Archer continued quietly. "My mate, chosen by the gods, trying to buy me with mortal treasures, as if I needed gold when I had found something infinitely more precious." She closed her mouth. "You weren't trying to impress me. You weren't calculating political advantage. You were just being honest about what you needed, and offering what you had in return, like a transaction between two people, not between titles. So yes, I smiled. Not because I was laughing at you, but because for the first time in years, someone was seeing me as just a man who could help, not as a king to be won." Ariel processed that, her anger beginning to waver. "But you still let me do it. Knowing." "Yes," he admitted without hesitation. "Because if I had told you right then, in that moment, everything would have changed. You wouldn't have made that proposal. You would have thought about politics, about implications, about whether I was testing you somehow. You would have stopped being honest and started being cautious." He stepped closer by one more pace. "And I wanted that moment. That one moment where someone chose me without knowing what came with it, where the choice was only about me." His hands lifted, then stopped just short of touching her face, waiting for permission. Ariel hesitated, then gave a slight nod. His fingers touched her cheeks, gentle. "You're angry with me. You have every right to be." "I am," she confirmed. "And yet you came here with me. You're still here. I don't know why. I think it's that shiny, hypnotizing hair. What happens now?" Archer smiled faintly. "You tell me. You made a proposal yesterday. I accepted. We formed a bond that cannot be undone. And now," he paused, "now you have to decide whether you can forgive me for keeping the truth. Whether you can trust me, even knowing I made that mistake. And if I can't?" she asked, testing. Something painful crossed his eyes. "Then we'll figure out how to navigate it. Because the bond is permanent, Ariel. You are my mate, my queen, whether you're angry with me or not. But I would prefer it to be more than obligation." Ariel took a deep breath, then nodded. "So, we start over? Somehow?" A small smile curved his lips. "If you want to." She extended her hand, formal. "Lady Ariel of Valamore. Future Queen of Thornhaven, apparently." Archer took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he lifted it to his lips, kissing her fingers gently. "King Archer of Thornhaven. Your mate. And occasional idiot. Despite everything, Ariel laughed, a small surprise sound that slipped out before she could stop it. Occasional? She arched a brow. I'm trying to be optimistic, he said, and there was real humor in his eyes now. And then, because she couldn't resist, because the bond pulsed with something warm and real between them, because he was looking at her as if she were the most precious thing he had ever seen. Ariel leaned in and kissed him. It was hesitant at first, just a soft brush, a question, a test. But Archer responded immediately. A low sound escaped his throat as one of his hands slid to the back of her head, fingers threading into her hair. The other went to her back, pulling her closer with an urgency that stole her breath. The kiss deepened quickly, turning into something more intense, more necessary. Ariel gasped against his lips, and Archer took advantage, tilting his head, changing the angle, deepening it even further. It wasn't gentle now. It was hunger, need, everything held back since the night before finally unleashed. His hand in her hair tightened slightly, holding her exactly where he wanted her, controlling the angle, the depth. The other slid down her back, fingers pressing through the velvet of her dress, feeling every curve, pulling her so close there was no space left between their bodies. Ariel felt her legs weaken, but Archer held her, steady, strong, unmovable. Her hands rose to his chest, feeling solid muscle beneath the fabric, then slid to his neck, fingers sinking into his hair, pulling him closer, deeper, demanding more. Archer groaned against her mouth, a low, primal sound vibrating through her, and suddenly they were moving. He guided her back until her shoulders met the wall, then pressed her against it, his solid, warm body erasing any space between them. One hand remained in her hair, keeping her head at exactly the angle he wanted. The other slid along the curve of her waist, her hip, fingers pressing with a possessiveness that should have frightened her, but only made her melt. The kiss was devastating, deep and consuming, stealing the air from her lungs and replacing it with liquid fire. His mouth moved against hers with desperate urgency, his tongue exploring, claiming, marking her in ways that left no visible scars, but that she would feel forever. Ariel couldn't think, couldn't breathe. She could only feel. His heat wrapping around her completely, the strength in his hands, his taste on her tongue, something wild and dark that made her want more, always more. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless, foreheads pressed together, hearts beating in sync through the bond. Ariel, Archer whispered, his voice utterly ruined. She opened her eyes slowly, meeting his. Amber darkened, blazing with hunger that made her stomach tighten. I'm still angry with you, she whispered, but the words carried no real force. Archer smiled, slow, dangerous, promising things that made her heart race. I can live with that. He kissed her again, gentler this time, but no less intense. And through the bond, Ariel felt everything. His desire, but also protection, possessiveness, pride in her, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name yet. When they parted again, Archer rested his forehead against hers, his fingers still threaded through her hair. Ariel closed her eyes, feeling the bond pulse between them, that connection that went far beyond what she had initially understood. How did I not see it? The truth struck her with sudden clarity. That night, on the dark street, when he held her for the first time, the recognition had been there. Primitive. Absolute. Mate. But she had been so consumed by Thomas's betrayal, so blinded by pain, so broken by the love she had given the wrong man, that she couldn't feel it. Couldn't hear what her instincts were screaming. She had offered gold to her destined mate without recognizing him. And now, with her heart beginning to heal, with Thomas's pain turning into distant memory instead of open wound, now she felt it. Clearly. Completely. This bond wasn't just the claiming bond she had asked for. It was the mate bond. The recognition that should have happened at first touch, but that her broken heart couldn't process. He knew, she realized with absolute certainty through the connection. He had felt it from the beginning. And still, he waited. Let her heal. Let her choose him without the weight of knowing fate had already tied them together. "You are mine," he said quietly. And it wasn't a question. It was a declaration, a promise, a vow. "And I am yours, no matter how angry you are. That doesn't change." "No," Ariel agreed softly, feeling the truth of it through the bond. "It doesn't." Archer pulled back slightly, though his hand still held her waist. "There's something I need to do," he said, and something in his tone made Ariel straighten. "What?" "Thomas," Archer said, the name coming out like a low growl. "He's still in the castle, and he needs to answer for what he did." The name fell between them like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples outward. Ariel felt something cold pass through her. She had almost forgotten, lost in the last few minutes. "What are you going to do?" "A trial. Public." His eyes hardened. "I want everyone to see that betraying you has consequences, that planning to hurt you comes at a price." He paused, studying her face. "But only if you want it. The choice is yours." Through the bond, Ariel felt his fury, controlled but absolute. And she felt the respect too. The way he was waiting for her decision. "I want to be there," she said, her voice firm. "I want to see him answer for it. I want to look him in the eyes and feel nothing. No love, no pain." Pride shone in Archer's eyes. "Then that's what we'll do." He stepped away, going to the door and opening it. Marcus stood on the other side, as if he had been waiting. "Summon the hall," Archer ordered. "All nobles, all servants who wish to witness. There will be a trial in 1 hour. Thomas, son of William, the blacksmith. He is to be arrested immediately for treason, conspiracy to commit theft, and planning the abandonment of a noblewoman." "He's already detained, my lord," Marcus said, and Ariel looked at Archer in surprise. He turned to her. "I ordered his arrest the moment I entered the castle and felt your pain through the bond. Before I even reached the hall, I commanded that they find the man who planned to betray you." His eyes hardened. 1 hour later, the great hall was full again. But this time, it was different. The summons had been broad. Not just nobles, but anyone who wished to witness was permitted. Servants, guards, villagers from the town. The hall was packed, people pressing in to see. The news had spread quickly. King Archer would conduct a trial. His mate, the future queen, would be present. And the accused was Thomas, the blacksmith's son whom many knew. Ariel entered hand in hand with Archer, and this time there was no shame in her steps. Head high, shoulders back, the mark clearly displayed. 2 thrones had been placed, one for the king, and one for her, for the queen. Archer helped her sit first, a deliberate gesture that did not go unnoticed by the crowd, then took his place beside her. When their hands met on the armrest between the thrones, fingers lacing naturally, the message was clear. Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying through the hall. "We are gathered for the trial of Thomas, son of William, blacksmith of Valamore. He stands accused of treason against a noblewoman, conspiracy to steal property, and planning abandonment under dangerous circumstances." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "The charges are severe," Marcus continued, "and as this crime involves Lady Ariel of Valamore, claimed mate of His Majesty King Archer of Thornhaven, this trial will be conducted under the laws of Thornhaven, with His Majesty presiding." He paused, letting the weight sink in. "Bring in the prisoner." The doors opened. Guards entered, dragging Thomas between them. He looked smaller, confused. His eyes swept the hall, so full, so many watching, until they landed on Ariel. and she saw the exact moment understanding hit him. The noblewoman he had planned to rob was seated on a throne, beside the king, with a clear claiming mark on her neck, as queen. Terror washed over his face, draining it of all color. Archer rose, and the hall fell instantly silent. "Thomas, son of William," his voice rang with absolute authority. "You stand accused of grave crimes against Lady Ariel of Valamore, my claimed mate. How do you plead?" Thomas opened and closed his mouth. Finally, I didn't know she was... that your majesty..." "Answer the question," Marcus ordered firmly. "Guilty or not guilty of the crimes presented." "I didn't know," Thomas shouted, desperation coloring his voice. "How could I know that she would be... that the king..." "So you admit the acts," Archer said with icy calm, "but claim ignorance of the victim's identity as your defense?" Tense silence. "I'll ask more plainly," Archer said. "Did you plan to deceive Lady Ariel? Did you plan to take her gold under false pretenses? Did you plan to abandon her in a dangerous location? Yes or no?" Thomas looked around desperately. He found no sympathy on any face. "Yes," he finally whispered. "But she wanted to run away. She asked me for help. I just..." "Call the witness," Archer ordered, cutting him off. Marcus signaled, and the man was brought forward. "You," Archer pointed to the servant, "tell the hall what you heard." The man, nervous but determined, spoke, his voice gaining strength. "I work at the tavern, Your Majesty. Last night I overheard Thomas and 2 other men at a table. They were drinking, laughing. Thomas said a noblewoman was so desperate she was going to give him all her gold. Said she had a fortune." The hall murmured in shock. "He said he would pretend to help her escape," the servant continued. "Said he would take the money, lead her away with the other 2 men as guards, and once they were far enough, they would take everything and leave her alone. Split the gold 3 ways. "Lies," Thomas shouted. "He's..." Silence. Absolute silence. Archer returned to his throne, standing beside Ariel, his hand settling on her shoulder. But there is one voice that matters more than any other: the victim. He looked at her. "Lady Ariel, future Queen of Thornhaven, the crime was against you. What is your verdict?" The entire hall turned. Ariel rose slowly, feeling the weight of it. But through the bond, she felt Archer's support. She descended the steps, approaching Thomas. And she felt pity, only pity. "You called me a fool," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "And maybe I was. Foolish to trust. Foolish to believe what we felt was real." She stopped in front of him. "But I learned something. Being brave enough to trust, to hope. That isn't weakness. It's strength. Because even after you betrayed me, I still had the courage to try again." Her voice grew stronger. "I made a desperate proposal to a stranger. I offered everything with no guarantees, and that stranger saw me, not as a fool, not as an opportunity, but as someone worth choosing." Thomas opened his mouth, but she cut him off. "So yes, I agree with whatever sentence His Majesty proposes, because you had the chance to choose kindness, loyalty, perhaps even real love, and you chose greed, you chose cruelty." She turned, walking back with steady steps. "And now you will live with the consequences." The hall erupted in approval. Archer took her hand as she reached the throne, absolute pride in his eyes. "The sentence," Archer declared, "is permanent banishment from all werewolf lands under the jurisdiction of Thornhaven and its allies. You will be marked as a traitor. Any property will be confiscated, and you have until tomorrow's sunset to leave these lands. If found afterward, immediate imprisonment." Thomas went white. "No, please, I have family." "You should have thought of that before," Archer said coldly. "Guards, take him." Thomas was dragged out, his pleas ignored. And when the doors closed, Ariel felt something finally loosen. It was over. Archer turned to the hall. Let this trial serve as a reminder. Betrayal has consequences, and those who harm the vulnerable will answer for it. He paused. This court is adjourned. After the hall emptied, Ariel remained seated on the throne, processing it all. Thomas was banished. Bartholomew had fled, and she was free. That afternoon, Ariel sent for her father. When he arrived at the chambers, caution lined every part of him. He seemed smaller, older. Ariel, sit down, she interrupted, pointing to a chair. He obeyed, and that alone said everything. Lord Cedric obeyed no one, but now he obeyed her. Ariel remained standing, a position of power that was no accident. You sold me, she said, her voice calm but heavy with raw truth. As if I were livestock, merchandise, something to be traded to the highest bidder. He opened his mouth. She raised a hand, silencing him. No, you will listen. For the first time in my life, you will truly listen. She took a deep breath, arranging years of hurt into precise words. You raised me to be a tool, to serve your ambitions, to strengthen alliances that benefited you. And when I no longer served your purposes the way you wanted, you sold me to the vilest man you could find. Lord Cedric shrank in his chair. But, Ariel continued, and there was strength in her voice now, I survived. Not because of you. In spite of you. I found my own courage. I made my own choices. And I built my own way out. She moved to the table, picking up a document Marcus had prepared that morning. She placed it in front of her father. This is an official renunciation. Valamore relinquishes any claim over me, any authority, any right to interfere in my life. He looked at the document, then at her. And this clause, Ariel pointed, specifies that any attempt to interfere, any attempt to use my name for political gain, any attempt to control me through Thornhaven will result in immediate severance of trade and alliances. Marcus made it very clear that Thornhaven will support this fully. Lord Cedric took the document with visibly trembling hands. He read it once, twice. You are cutting me off completely, he said, his voice hoarse. No, Ariel corrected. I'm freeing myself. There's a difference. If you sign this, if you respect my boundaries, maybe one day we can have some kind of relationship. But it will be on my terms, not yours. Heavy silence filled the room. Lord Cedric looked at the document, then at the daughter he barely recognized. The obedient girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who commanded respect. A queen. He began, his voice breaking. Ariel, I'm sorry. She waited, not helping him, not softening. Not just for selling you, he continued, the words coming with difficulty. Though I regret that as well. But for never seeing you, for never asking what you wanted, for spending your entire life treating you like a piece on a board instead of my daughter. Tears filled his eyes, real, not manipulative. I did what my father did to me, what was done to generations of our family, and I never stopped to question whether it was wrong, whether it was hurting you. I just followed the pattern. He wiped his eyes roughly, his hands still shaking. You deserved better. You deserved a father who protected you, not one who sold you. And I failed. Completely. Ariel felt something tighten in her chest. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was something. A beginning, perhaps. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said honestly. Not now. Maybe not ever completely. What you did left scars. I know, he whispered. But, she continued, I also won't carry this weight forever. I won't let what you did define who I am." She pointed to the document. "Sign it, and let me move on." Lord Cedric took the quill. His hands shook so badly he nearly spilled the ink, but he signed, each letter carefully formed, as if he were signing not just a document, but the end of an era. When he finished, Ariel took the paper, checked the signature, and folded it carefully. "Thank you," she said simply. He looked at her surprised. "For signing, for apologizing, even if it's too late. For finally seeing me." She stepped closer, and for the first time in years touched his shoulder. Brief, but real. "I don't owe you obedience anymore," she said softly. "But I give you back your humanity. You are my father. That doesn't change. But who we are to each other, that will depend on you, on the choices you make from here on." She stepped away, heading for the door. "Goodbye, Father." It wasn't "see you later." It wasn't "we'll talk soon." It was goodbye. Final, definitive. Lord Cedric remained seated, watching his daughter leave, and for the first time in decades, he cried. Ariel found Archer in the courtyard the next morning, already waiting beside the carriage. Eliza was inside, nervous but excited. Guards were positioned, horses ready, everything waiting only for her. Archer studied her face as she approached, seeing something different there. "How did it go?" "Necessary," she replied simply. He nodded, understanding through the bond. Then he held out his hand. "Ready?" Ariel looked back at the castle one last time, the towers where she had grown up, the windows of her chambers, the great hall where she had been struck, humiliated, and then defended. And she felt nothing. No longing, no regret, no pain. Only peace. "I left a long time ago," she said, taking his hand. Archer smiled, that smile that transformed his face, and helped her into the carriage. He mounted his horse beside it, Marcus gave the signal, and the procession began to move. Ariel didn't look back. There was no reason to. Her past was sealed, signed, and delivered. Her father had his apology and her boundaries. Thomas was banished. Bartholomew had fled. And she was free. Through the window, she watched Archer riding, blonde hair gleaming in the rising sun, posture confident, amber eyes occasionally flicking to the carriage as if he needed to be sure she was still there. My mate, my king, my chosen. And for the first time in her life, Ariel wasn't running from something. She was running toward something. Toward Thornhaven. Toward her new kingdom. Toward a life that would be her own. "Where have your thoughts gone, my lady?" Eliza asked timidly from across the carriage. Ariel smiled, touching the mark on her neck that still pulsed with warmth. "To the future," she said. "Only to the future." And as the carriage rolled on, leaving Valamore behind for good, Ariel closed her eyes and let the bond wrap around her. Through it, she felt Archer. His satisfaction, his joy, his fierce pride in her. And something deeper, something that was beginning to feel dangerously like. Later, she thought, smiling. We'll explore that later. For now, it was enough to be free. It was enough to have chosen. It was enough to be going home.